Yellow here, our Chief Philanthropic Officer. We also have Melissa Larobadier, Associate Development Director, and I will be here to assist you today during today's presentation. Before we get started, I want to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's session. I've taken a screenshot here to show you an example of the attendee interface. You should see something that looks like this on your own computer desktop in the upper right corner. You have joined today's webinar listening through your telephone by default. If you would like to use computer speaker system, just locate your audio pane and select microphone and speakers. You also have the ability to ask questions using your questions pane. Simply type in your question and click send. At the end of the presentation, we will do a Q&A session and take as many questions as we have time for. If you no longer have the time to answer your questions, we will email all of them to our speaker, Jonathan, and we will forward you the answers at a later time. Please mute your audio device during the presentation. This webinar will be recorded and archived and can be accessed from our website, www.bergenvolunteers.org. Our next webinar is scheduled on April 13, 2016, so please watch out for our email. All right, so Bergen Leads, one of Bergen Volunteer Center program, is looking for individuals from a wide range of fields who have the skills, the values, and motivation to be a special kind of leader. We are looking for individuals who have the desire and capacity to take their leadership strengths to a higher level in order to help their communities, professions, and organizations. So if you are ready and if you want to lead, apply now at bergenleads.org. If you have any questions and you want more details, you may contact me at bdigisman@bergenvolunteers.org, or you can call me at 201-489-9454, extension 203. You can also visit our website at www.bergenleads.org. All right, I want to give you to Lauren, and thank you and have a great day today. Lauren?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you. Really quick, I just wanted to introduce the Bergen Volunteer Center. Here we inspire, train, and develop volunteers and leaders who strengthen our community through meaningful service and effective community engagement. In 2016, the Bergen Volunteer Center will celebrate 50 years of service in our community. Our ability to adapt in an ever-changing economic and social environment has been and will continue to be the key to our enduring success. We look forward to ensuring that nonprofits, corporations, and organizations continue to expand their capacity to provide valuable opportunities for the community and get involved. At 50, we're not getting old, we're just getting started. One of the initiatives to kick off our 50th anniversary is going to be our Books in a Bag. As you'll see on your screen, Books in a Bag is a business volunteer community outreach initiative. 23% of New Jersey residents read at or below a 4th grade reading level. The books that we'll collect will be distributed to preschool children on Read Across America Day. Our goal is to distribute over 10,000 books to over 1,000 children in northern New Jersey. To donate to Books in a Bag, you can contact Erica West at the information listed on your screen, ewest@bergenvolunteers.org, or at our main number extension 205. Also, this Friday is our comedy night. March 18th at Bananas Comedy Club in Hasbrook Heights. It's going to be a great fundraiser. It's going to be a lot of fun, and all the proceeds from that night will support the Bergen Volunteer Center and our mission. Doors open at 8 p.m. and the show begins at 9. If you'd like to attend or have any questions regarding comedy night, please reach out to Melissa at extension 206. And finally, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our webinar speakers this afternoon, Mr. Jonathan Schick. Jonathan believes in the power of effective leaders to unify movements and create community impact. He is a dynamic leadership consultant and a nationally known speaker who has founded 2 successful nonprofits and has consulted for over hundreds of organizations. As president of the Goal Consulting Group, with offices in both New Jersey, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, and Denver, Jonathan's clients include the American Red Cross, the United Way, major independent school districts, and Boys and Girls Clubs. He is also the author of The Nonprofit Secret, 6 Principles of Successful Board/CEO Partnerships. Jonathan has also earned a master's degree in educational administration from Boston College, along with a bachelor's degree in human resources. Jonathan, I'm going to turn the presentation over to you, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate that introduction. Thank you, Vianne. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm going to just move on to the presentation. Again, I appreciate all that the Bergen Volunteer Center has done for the community. As Lauren has alluded to, but not mentioned directly, I personally have, including keeping my office in Dallas, Texas, have opened an office in Bergen County, and thrilled to be a part of the community and be available as a resource to you all in Bergen and beyond the Jersey counties. So we're here today to discuss the 5 essential elements or steps of strategic planning. Let me start by saying that there's really 2 reasons why strategic plans fail or never get off the ground. And again, strategic plan has gotten a bad rap, strategic plans, because, you know, they end up what some people have coined the term spots, strategic plans on the shelf. They end up being museum quality, suitable for framing, but they don't actually have any utility. They don't have any actual usage, because there's either, really for 2 reasons, which I'm about to tell you to start out with. Number 1, they're not simple enough. You need to actually have a plan that's simple, because if you start from simple, you can actually execute off of that. If you have a convoluted 65-page, monotonous, wordy, verbiage-driven document, then no one's going to even want to look at it again after you finish, let alone actually execute it. So my bias in strategic planning is simplicity. In all the work I do, I emphasize simplicity, because then you have a fighting chance to actually execute when you start with a plan that's manageable. And obviously the goals of the plan and the outcomes may not be actually simple, but the actual plan itself can be simple. Second reason why strategic plans fail is because essentially they are not participatory, meaning they are created by either a committee. And in the work that I do with boards, I emphasize the importance of committees, but one committee that I don't recommend is a strategic planning committee, because the indication of that is that the strategic planning committee does this, or creates a strategic plan, and then gives it over to the rest of the nonprofit, the board, the institution, the staff, etc., for implementation. But the problem is that the rest of the board, the staff, they have no ownership. They have no ownership of the plan. So that's another fatal flaw. So instead of that, what we can do is we can create a participatory plan, whereby especially if you have a large nonprofit, it doesn't mean everybody will be in the room during the actual planning session, but a good diagonal swath of all the key players, staff, board, of course, CEO, executive director, even volunteers, even people who are consumers of the actual nonprofit services. Like, for example, I work with some cancer support type of nonprofits. So in those cases, we brought in some of the actual cancer patients who are getting support from the institution, from the nonprofit, and they also, as they're on the ground level, and they could see also and participate and add a lot of value to the process. So participatory strategic planning is essential for success. So again, simple and participatory. Now we're going to get into the actual 5 essential elements or steps of strategic planning, and what this strategic plan is, what it's going to look like. If I were giving this work as a workshop in public, I would be asking you more directly about what your experience has been with strategic planning. But when I've generally conducted these, the reaction I get is that there's a handful of people who, maybe 30 to 40% of a crowd, that actually has done a strategic plan. But of those 30 to 40%, when I ask the question about was it successful in the sense that it actually came to implementation, a lot of the hands go down. So we're going to talk about the way you can actually end up doing a successful and executable strategic plan. Okay, the first is the 5 steps of the strategic plan are, first of all, to create that excellence of strategic planning, are these 5, which I'm actually going to show you more clearly on the next screen. Practical vision is the first step, which leads us to find contradictions, strategic directions, focused implementation, and finally execution and evaluation. If any of these 5 steps are missing, the strategic plan will likely fail. So you need all 5, and we're going to walk through all 5 of them one by one right now. And that is the life cycle of the strategic plan. Let me just step back for a minute. Before I get into these 5, again, as Deanne said earlier, and Lauren as well, if any of you have questions, in this type of format, we're going to save the questions for the end. So you can certainly address the questions via chat, and then we will hopefully address them as much as we can at the end. And then those who have more will be able to address at a later time. All right. So step 1 is the practical vision. Where do we want to be in 3 to 5 years from now? So we need to set the stage with the practical vision. What I usually do, and I recommend for a strategic planning retreat, that's really the best way to do this. Again, I don't really suggest a strategic plan taking like a huge amount of time. There is pre-work. There certainly is post-work. But the key place of the strategic planning event is a retreat. When and how and where you have the retreat can be massaged and can change. But generally, the way I work it is that in the evening of the first day, I start with practical vision. This gets people excited. This gets people motivated. Says, where do we want to be 3 to 5 years from now? Like, for example, one of the exercises I do is, if you were a nonprofit that was, let's say, highlighted as the nonprofit of the year in the Bergen Record or Star Ledger, then what would the newspaper be writing about you 3 to 5 years out? And how would we be serving the community differently if we realized our vision? What would look different? This is like a stretching step. This is a step that we dream, but we dream with practically also. We don't just say things that are completely impossible and just for the sake of saying them, but we stretch. We go beyond ourselves and beyond what we think is perhaps possible right in front of us, but we also keep it in the practical sense. So it's practical vision is the first step of the strategic plan. This step, like all steps, they generally take between 2.5 to 3 hours. If you have a smaller group, it's perhaps a little less. Larger group, a little bit more. And by the way, I generally recommend a crowd of anywhere between as low, if you're really, really a small shop, 12 people, which is on the low side, to about 24, 26 would be somewhere in that range. Once you hit 30 or up, it gets a little bit more, you end up actually not being able to involve all the people in the planning. So, and crucially, involve everybody. So 30 is okay, 32 even, but once you get past that, it's a little bit unwieldy. All right, so that's practical vision. Let's go, and then again, like I said, that usually happens in the evening. Again, it could, I've worked with nonprofits throughout the country, and some have restrictions on when they can get together and whatnot. So therefore, sometimes we can do this in the morning or sometimes we can even chop it up into, like some people who have only the ability to get their people together, let's say evenings. So it's not the best way to do it, but you can do something like an evening and then another evening, and then you do it. The main thing is getting it done, okay? But there are a number of possibilities there. The next step for strategic planning is underlying contradictions. This is probably outside of, well, I would say all the steps are important, but really 2 and 4 are really probably the deal breakers, if you will. Every part really is necessary, but underlying contradictions is, if you don't do this, then there is no way you're ever going to get to execute on what you're trying to achieve. What is this underlying contradictions? Well, as you see from the visual, you got that working iceberg. The only visible part is on top, but the real behemoth is on the bottom. So, you know, I think what happens with all of us, especially in the nonprofit space, is that we end up sort of being satisfied or stuck, if you will, where we are. Now, even if things aren't really broken, some people think, you know, if it's not broken, why fix it? I would suggest that if it's not broken, that is a good reason to fix it. That doesn't mean that every day or every year even you go ahead and do a retreat like this. Although I do think you should review it every year, at least on a smaller basis. But you need to be able, in the lifespan of your nonprofit, to address the elephants in the room. You have to address the blocks, the underlying contradictions. I think we're trying to attain our vision. Let's say we're trying to reach 5,000 people in Bergen County and the surrounding counties who are needing of, let's say, a certain type of care, whether it be an after-school program. We're trying to hit, like, in one of my clients, ADA, average daily attendance, is sort of the bellwether to determine success. So you want to reach a certain level of ADA, average daily attendance, in an after-school program. Okay, well, why aren't you getting there? Why are you hitting only 1,500 or maybe scratching 2,000 when you could really be serving 5,000? So the fact of the matter is that there are blocks, there are underlying contradictions that are preventing us from getting there. What do these blocks look like? Well, first of all, and we're looking for root causes. So, for example, if you are out there, let's just imagine, take the following thought. If you are in your garden and you are watering your garden, and I know spring is coming, so you know, we can look forward to that, and you're watering your garden, and you notice that all of a sudden the hose that you're using, the water stops. So do you stand there and stay paralyzed and say, oh my God, there's no water, no more water, I can't do anything, and you just stand there paralyzed? Or you search for the cause of the water stoppage, and the cause would be a kink in the hose or something like that. And you go and you fix the kink, and then you're back in business. Okay? What's really astounding is that how often do I hear, and do you hear probably, in the various conversations of why we can't do this and why we can't do that, there's a lack of money, there's a lack of manpower, there's a lack of resources. Well, in my suggested way of strategic planning, the lack disappears. We're not looking for lack. Just like in the hose example, it's not a lack of water that's preventing us from watering our garden. The water is flowing. There's a kink in the hose. There's a practice. There's a mindset. There's a habit that prevents us, that lies at the root of why we don't achieve the goals that we set for ourselves. In a lot of nonprofits, and a lot of this applies to really any business. I mean, the strategic planning process applies to any entity, really. And in a lot of organizations, you know, practices that have been in place for years and years are the reasons for the failure of any of these initiatives. Well, we always feel that, you know, when we, for example, when we, again, looking at the ADA example, well, we're very limited with staff. So therefore, without more staff, we can't bring in more kids. Okay. Well, what's really the block of having more staff? Okay. Is it an issue of development? Is it an issue of morale? Is it an issue that you scare away people that you join your staff, leave after 6 months because they're dissatisfied with the culture? So that might be the reason why you can't keep people. and therefore you can't reach your ADA. It's not about the fact that, oh, there's no staff. Well, there's no staff because the culture stinks. And the culture stinks because of XYZ, where we have to get to the very root cause to figure it out. And then once we identify these underlying contradictions, or things that prevent and hinder or block the vision, then we can move on. Now, this is a cathartic stage, not an easy stage, but in many nonprofit strategic plans and for-profit, I've done some as well, I can tell you that this is the key step. This is the step that will make or break. And people actually walk out of there, although it's difficult, there is that a little bit of a cathartic feeling. Now, I generally suggest this be done in the morning, because when people are fresh and people are ready to tackle the world, for example, the evening they did the practical vision, they're excited, they're motivated. In the morning, you can tackle now this really heavy elephant, as it were, and go forward. Okay, so that's underlying contradictions. Strategic directions. Strategic directions are the steps of how we address the underlying contradictions and move us towards our vision. Now, the logic here and the way this is done is very, very intentional. So remember, step one, practical vision. We want to reach 5,000 kids, okay? Step two, right, morale, culture, other types of blocks may exist, okay? Resources, but the resources that we don't have, the funding that is not happening, is not necessarily because there's something wrong with the fundraising machine. No. The reasoning behind why the fundraising machine is stagnant, whether it be you're way underutilizing your database, whether it be that the CEO and the CDO, the Chief Development Officer, and the CEO or Executive Director and the Development Committee are not on the same page. So maybe that's the reason why. So you've identified in the process before the various root causes. Now, in strategic directions, we say, okay, how do we address that underlying contradiction? How do we address the block? We don't go straight and say, okay, we want to hit 5,000 kids. What are we going to do? Because that's the mistake people make. Okay, we want to hit 5,000 kids. How are we going to do it? Well, if you didn't address the blocks, then what? So here in strategic directions, we address the blocks, which help us then move us towards our vision. The questions we ask in this stage is, what will be different if we mobilize into action to reach the vision? The classic thing, which is SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, are all key parts of an actual strategic direction stage that are not just pie in the sky here. Now, again, in the practical vision stage, we had the luxury to sort of dream without necessarily any real, tangible targets. In this stage, in strategic directions, we actually have to be able to specifically state what our targets are and make them SMART targets, SMART actions. So you see the with the compass, having a vision without action is just daydreaming. Again, that's a line that you all know and have seen before. But that's what it is. You have a lot of visionaries out there, a lot of people with great, great vision. Okay, but the action not being there, it's just a dream. So, and I would add to that, without adjusting the contradiction, it's certainly not going to happen. So the strategic direction stage is a crucial one as well. Again, looking at the sort of setup of strategic planning retreat, if you chose to do something like that, it would be, again, evening practical vision, morning underlying contradictions, and then in the afternoon you would then address strategic directions. One thing that you don't want to do, if you can avoid it, again, there are exceptions because, we're dealing with people and schedules and whatnot, and it's not always easy. Although I will say at this point that if you're bored, certainly your staff will be there because your staff they're paid, as it were. But if your board members are not able to find the time to give a day and a quarter to your nonprofit, I would question why they're on your board. So I really would push you all to think about that when you think about scheduling things like this. But anyway, what really is important, though, is that you don't end on step 2 and then have a break till, let's say, next week. At the very most, I would allow for a day the next day. So I've done in certain cases, we did underlying contradictions the evening before. The next evening, we do strategic directives. The problem is that if you wait too long between exposing the elephant and then actually addressing the issues, then it could create a lot of worry, tension, and unnecessarily, because we definitely want to open up the elephant. But once we open that elephant up, we have to patch it together. So anyway, that's strategic direction. And let's move on to the 4th step of focused implementation. All right, focused implementation is the final step done in retreat form. What I mean by that is that when you have everyone together in this sort of formal retreat way. So what is this stage? This stage actually brings the strategic direction down to the current reality, action steps, and success indicators. So what's the current reality in terms of time and resources? So we're first going to look at where are we right now? You want to reach that $5,000 student mark, etc. Okay. What's the reality now? What's our numbers, etc., etc. What's going on right now? The next step that we do, actually, when we do this, if you go ahead and you do it on your own, I would urge you to do it this way. Go to success indicators, which is the 3rd column, and say go from current reality and say, okay, what are the significant success indicators that will show that we achieved our vision? You're looking for just 2 or 3 big wins here. You're looking for, let's say, again, not just the number of students. That's an easy target, by the way. But let's say if you had a goal, a strategic direction of improved communication, how would you assess improved communication among staff or improved morale? So one of the things that you can do in the current reality stage, actually when you actually implement the plan, is you can create a sort of a baseline survey of where the morale and where the where the satisfaction level of your staff are. And that could also include volunteers and also people who are receiving the services of your nonprofit. And you go ahead and you do this baseline survey, and then you implement whatever action steps you're going to do to increase morale and communication. And then you're going to make another baseline survey, let's say 6 months down or a year down, and that will be your success indicator. So you're looking for a percentage increase in satisfaction, morale, etc., among your stakeholders. So that's the success indicator. Then you go back to action steps, the middle column, and then you write in what are the specific actions that we can take to attain success. So at this stage, so let's imagine if you had 30 people in your strategic planning retreat, right? So the 30 people in the first 3 stages are all working together, as it were. There's a lot of breakout groups. And again, I'm giving you the outline of how to do this. You certainly, I don't recommend necessarily that you do this on your own. Let's say if you're the CEO, to facilitate your own plan. For example, in my own work, I'm a board chair of a international school, and I don't facilitate the strategic plan of my own nonprofit that I'm volunteering on, because I would not be objective enough. I'm too in it. So I would suggest that you find a objective third party to help establish and help run this for you. Now, so let's getting back to the stage here. So 30 people are in this retreat, and then after the first stage, and the second and the third stages, they're all working together, breakout groups, whatnot. The fourth stage, now we break them up completely. Let's say you're going to end up with about 4 or 5 strategic directions, 6 maximum. You do not have more than 6 strategic directions. So you see on the top, strategic direction name, first year action, right? So you'll say you're going to have 6 of them. One of them is morale and communication. One of them is about daily attendance. One of them is about fundraising. One of them is about board governance. One of them is about committee work. So those are your 4 or 5 or 6 strategic directions. Now, people will self-select into the group that they feel that they have the most type of knowledge or buy-in into that area. And you have about 5 people, 4 to 5 people. So if you have 30, that's 5 times 6. 6 groups, so 6 strategic directions divided in 5 people in each one. You have a smaller group, which is a little easier even. You can do 24 people, 4 and so, or whatever the number works out. Now, each group on their own will come out with its current reality, action steps, and then success indicators. And on the bottom, you're going to put the group, the names of the group, the contributors, the authors who are contributing and are actually working the plan. So that is your focus implementation stage. This is usually the last step in the retreat. This still, though, although this becomes very practical, there's still more work that needs to be done in order for this to actually be executable on the ground. You can actually leave from this 4-step process and not go to the 5th yet, and you'll actually have achieved very much, because what you'll achieve at this point is buy-in, ownership of the plan. Everybody who is in that room will have a sense of buy-in, and everyone will know in an egalitarian way what the plan's goals are. Okay? But without the 5th step, then it really makes it's challenging, not impossible, challenging to actually execute. So let's go to that step. Okay, this is not done in the big group. This is done in small work groups, basically. So a lot of times the people who sat on that little committee or little group in step 4 on that particular goal, let's say the goal around morale and communication, a number of them, if not all of them, will end up on this group that is going to help establish the actual work plan, the really tactical work plan about how we're going to achieve it. So on the top of this little chart, you have strategic actions for the first year accomplishment. That's a little wordy, but of, let's say, increasing morale and communication among staff and stakeholders. Let's say that's the name of the goal. You'll have a leader for it. You'll have, let's say, the 5 action steps, new challenges that come up over time. This chart is a living and breathing chart. So things change and things grow out of it. Accountability, completion time frame. Now that's crucial. You can have divide this up into quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, each quarter, and you can have check-ins at each quarter to make sure that you're on target. There you'll put the original authors from the focus implementation session. The reason you put that is in case you have like a question about what we really said or what was really meant by what we wrote down back then. Collaborators, resources needed, budgetary concerns, current meeting dates, recent failure, recent success. Now I'm simplifying, but this is a pretty involved type of charting to create the momentum to strategic plan. Not all of you have to have such an elegant chart. There are nonprofits that I've worked with or that I've just been aware of who've done plans like this that have a little bit more of a, excuse me one sec, that have a little bit more of a, you know, less bells and whistles, if you will. But when we work with my associates and I, when we work with various clients who would want this type of fifth step, the luxury of focus of the fifth step, this is the type of document that we recommend that we create. And it essentially is like this. Implementing a plan is not rocket science necessarily, but having the luxury of focus from an objective third party provides a tremendous amount of value because, again, you are in it every day, and you are living the day-to-day drama of being a nonprofit professional. Okay, having the focus for this fifth step consistently there, and having those recurring meetings, and having those quarterly check-ins, and then at the end of the year, you go ahead and you bring back everyone together in the strategic plan and say, what have we accomplished? Where are we? What did we need to tweak? What did we need to change? What did we need? What was the surprise? What was the failure? Right? So this last step is actually the sort of, it ends up being almost the performance review of that particular goal. Okay, it's all there. Okay, let me share with you just a little bit before I break for questions. Let me share with you a little bit of some more ideas around the strategic planning process. So again, it's a simple process. Implementation is not necessarily simple, as you saw from the last slide, but the key bones, the actual framework of the retreat, those first 4 steps, are simple. Okay, it's black and white, not 65 pages. It ends up being on a total of 8 to 10 pages, something you can refer back to, something that people can hold on to, something that people can touch. And then in everyone's individual committee or group, there's where committees can be helpful. So if you have a committee that's going to help, let's say development committee, a fundraising, advancement, is going to specifically work on that goal, that particular goal around fundraising in your plan, yeah, that's their Bible for the year. That's their Bible for the next 3 years, actually. And they're going to go take that and they're going to run with it. Okay, and that could be very, very involved, and there's going to be a lot of specific points, and they're going to be things that whether it be a capital campaign, an annual campaign, the database, the individual meetings with high-level donors, all the things that go along with it, right? So that's very, very involved. But the actual meat of the plan is those initial 4 steps. I want to distinguish in your minds. There's the 4 basic parts of the strategic plan. The 5th one is really the tactical level of execution, but it's essential for it to be actually done. So you need all 5, but I want you to refer back to the 4 as sort of the guts of it. The other thing that's really amazing that happens when you do this the right way is that everybody is involved because everyone has the buy-in, the ownership piece, the participatory piece. Everyone was at the table. Everyone had a seat at the table. Now, again, if you're a university, and now one of my clients is a university with 35,000 students, so hey, we're not going to bring in everyone to this. And in fact, in that case, we hit about, I think, 40 people in that, which is that's it. That's the most I'll facilitate. But yeah, not every student and not every faculty obviously are going to be in the room, but the key slice of stakeholders are there, representative of every sort of demographic, and therefore you are getting that full level of participation. Now, there are always going to be outliers. They're always going to, and people ask me often, how are you going to get everyone to agree in the same room? There's no way. Well, a key part of the philosophy behind this process is the following that I heard from a professor of mine at Boston a long, long time ago. and that is people would rather be heard and understood than agreed with. So you're not going to come out of this everyone agreeing with the same thing, but you will have a meeting of the minds where people are able to come together and find that level of that middle ground of their agreement. And the outliers, the people who are low morale, low energy, toxic even, those people do not end up over time as contributors to this. They will show their colors, and if they don't step up, then the tough decisions might have to be made. Now, obviously, the owners of this plan are ultimately the board and the CEO, or executive director. They're the ones who are going to be the champions, and they're the ones who are going to make sure that every different one of the goals and every different one of the groups that run the goals are going to be achieved. So they are the ones where the buck stops back at them. So you've got a simple plan, you've got a participatory plan, you got 4 main steps, and then the 5th execution step, which all make up the essential elements of strategic planning. So I can pause here, and I appreciate everybody's time. In this last screen, there are resources. There's some information on my website, also the website about the book, or certainly feel free to hit me up on Facebook and we can be friends. So, but I'll turn it over to Deanne for questions.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you. There's actually one question. Will they be able to get a copy of the slides? Would you
yes,
be willing to distribute the slides? Okay. So I can email. So you'll email me the slides, and I can email it to them.
The PowerPoint, and yeah, you can distribute to everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. All right. Are there any other questions from the audience while we still have Jonathan with us? Questions? You have your questions pane there. You can type in your question, and I can share the question to Jonathan. All right. Again, Jonathan, if I receive any questions, how long does this process take at a retreat? The question is from Myra Sacco.
Okay. Hi. At the retreat, all you need is a day and a quarter. You need like an evening and then a full day. So, and the other thing is that I recommend that this be done off-site. You know, there are, you know, when you do work in your own walls, even though the walls may be comfortable and friendly and you're used to them, you know, the old thoughts and old habits sometimes emerge. So I always recommend, when possible, to conduct a retreat like this in a off-site location. I mean, I've conducted them in beautiful retreat centers, you know, small hotel room, you know, conference rooms, and even places that are not particularly like classrooms that have seats that are, you know, 4 or 5, you know, very small seats and all. But the main thing is that it be done in an off-site location. Obviously, you want to have things like, you know, an airy room, a comfortable room, a room that people are going to be spending some time there, food, resources. I even recommend that you have little trinkets or things that you can. There are a lot of people who are, you know, kinetic type of learners or whatnot, and you need to stand and you need to get up and around, or to tactile touch like these, like, you know, Slinkies or little you know, Oriental trading stuff. We put them out at the tables, and people hold on to them during the retreat, sometimes for dear life. Gives them a little bit of a security blanket. But it's a tough process. It's not an easy process. But again, back to your question, one evening where you do practical vision, and then the full day where you do the next 3 steps, and then the 5th step is done later. It's done later in each sort of grouping. We'll go ahead and take what we've come out from the retreat, and each group you'll divide them up, and they'll work on it. Often I would say each group needs to spend a good half day on coming up with that chart, sometimes even a full day if it's that integrated or intricate. And then it's then presented back to the board and CEO. And I'm to execute.
There's another follow-up question from Myra. Is there a pre-work required to prep for this process?
Great question, Myra. Thank you. Yeah, so that's a really good question on a lot of levels, because it brings me to a point, and that is a lot of times when people do strategic plans, they think they have to, do a, I don't know, 6-month survey and fact-finding mission and whatnot before they enter the strategic planning thing. By the time you do that, the world changed in 6 months. So I recommend a pretty lean pre-work. Now, the pre-work is needed. What I do recommend is that, number one, a survey can be done, okay, to get sort of a lay of the land. But I think whoever is actually facilitating a retreat, and you really do need a retreat facilitator. It can be someone who's ready to volunteer their services. Generally, I wouldn't recommend a board member because they're too in it again. But if someone has someone who can do it pro bono or whatnot, or great, terrific. Or if you have a blue chip type of consulting firm like the McKinseys or Boston Consulting Group, who someone happens to know, but just beware that if they do it, you're going to have a much different process. So if you can have them do it to serve the nonprofit world, that's fine. Or, of course, you can consider hiring a facilitator. But the point that I was going to make is that the pre-work should be one where the facilitator is able to visit, which, by the way, is a Texas word. I got to change it. Is to be able to meet with key stakeholders. Not all, let's say, if you're having 25 of them, not all 25 necessarily. But you're going to know that there are 10 to 12 people who you need to meet with beforehand. For some, it's about calming their fears. For some, it's about building trust. For some, it's about gleaning information that's a little bit underneath. But most of that pre-work should be simply individual meetings with the facilitator to get people on board and people excited. And you can also have another, and then right before that, right after you do the individual meetings, I recommend one meeting with the board chair and the CEO, or perhaps a couple board members and the CEO, to just unpack the basic things of what you learned and set the stage for the retreat. Not particularly difficult. So you're talking about a day, day and a half, 2 days of pre-work. And that's the other thing, by the way, and that's the great thing about this plan that everybody loves. You don't have to do any homework or actual physical prep work before. You walk in. You're a blank sheet of paper. You don't have to come in with any filled out huge forms or huge surveys. It's a blank sheet of paper because the knowledge is within you. All there, within the collective of the group. And we just have to bring it out. And then magic happens.
That's great. Well, is that the same for, so Karen has a question. How do you prepare a board that has not been deeply involved with the organization, but are being asked to step up and get more involved, including being part of the strategic planning process? Would that be the same answer or a different approach?
So again, it's sort of similar to what I just said, yeah, that to Karen's question, that basically you need to go and let's say you have a couple people who have a lot, you sort of would say that they have a lot of potential as board members, that they've been underengaged, underused. You go to them and you motivate them, and the facilitator can help with that, and say, and this is the opportunity, this is the time, we need you. This is the time. But if you have people who are people will vote with their feet. If people are just like, they're just sort of like potted plants on your board, and they bring no value and they're no interest, they don't show up at meetings and they don't show up at the retreat, I would make it, short of someone having an absolute urgent conflict, I would make it absolutely mandatory for board members to be there. And you give them different dates to choose from. You give them 3 different dates. You send out a bulk polling thing. Now, if someone has their mother's I don't know, 80th birthday or whatever it is, and there's no way, okay, there's no way. I mean, he tried it, I think there's no way, there's a conflict. But if someone just says, don't have the time, that is an indicator that this person is not. So essentially, you need to be able to go to these people and say, whatever happened in the past in terms of engagement or involvement, that's fine, it is what it is. But we're stepping up, and we need you to be present, and we need your voice and your opinion at this retreat, and the time is now.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I think that's it for today. If you need to contact or ask any more questions, his phone number is on the screen. He is on Facebook, and he also has his own website and his phone number and his email address. Thank you very much. And Jonathan, thank you. Have a great day. Enjoy the weather today. And I'll see you again next month. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks. Bye.